We are taught giving means you're a good person, you're a good human being, you are validated for being a giver. Receivers have no boundaries. So givers have to make boundaries. Giving also as a part of a trauma response because you've been a giver. You do particular things in particular ways, you grow up before your time, you have to become an adult when you are, let's say, a 6-year-old. You're continuously giving. Psychotherapy is not a progressive chart, it's not an upward graph. It is like an ECG. It could be like a really bad heart attack as well. People doing their duty by staying with their parents who've caused a lot of harm on them. And then there are people who've made hard choices and they have left. Today, when people are adopting kids, why can't you adopt parents? Parents is not just biology and DNA.
There is a certain kind of pressure that is on men to not be unstable in their emotions, in their behavior. There's a lot of pressure. Define what is grief.
An overwhelming emotion. It goes beyond sadness. Grief is a very personal journey. It is very alone. You will feel very alone. Grief is not just if someone passes away. If you are having continuous bad experiences and you're the common factor there, pause. Reflect. What's going on? What are you choosing? What are you being? What are you choosing to be? Sit, evaluate. Think whether you want to rewire this. You are not your job, you're not your cars, you are not your home. You're not.
Then who are we?
Who are you? If you were to say 3 things about yourself, honestly, what are those 3 things? I cannot tell you how long people take to answer that question because they don't know who they are.
I wanted you to bring in the angle of neurosis and psychosis. What is the real thing that is happening in your physical, mental, emotional body? What is your imagination? In today's episode, we are decoding trauma. What trauma really is, why it happens, how it shows up in our life, what are the clear signs of trauma, what is the way to heal from trauma, what is grief, how does grief show up, why grief comes out differently for men and women, what is therapy, where is it important, how does it help. A lot of these important questions, a lot of cultural references in the Indian context is also something that we have discussed in this episode. It's a very important episode. Watch it till the very end to gain some deep insights about your life. And now let's get into today's episode. Welcome to the Journey Within podcast with me, Shobha Rana. I am an emotional intelligence and mindset coach and also the host and the creator of this podcast. The aim of this podcast is to help you take the journey within, to go inwards to meet your inner self. Because all the answers that we are seeking for in the outside world are inside, because these answers come from what I think about myself, what I think about my life, what is my perspective about my life, how do I process my thoughts, feelings, emotions, and life events. Understanding of this is very important. And I'm not saying this in a very perfectionist style or a saintly style that, all the answers are within. No, but what are the real tools that you can kind of use to find those answers? How can you find those answers deep within yourself is something we try to decode in this podcast through different lens by inviting people from different walks of life and seeking through their journey, their experiences, and their wisdom to solve our life and improve our life. Today, we have with us an independent mental health professional. She's trained in clinical and forensic psychology. Please welcome Havovi Hyderabadwala to the Journey Within podcast. Hi, Havovi.
Hello.
So nice to meet you.
Likewise. Thank you
And
for having me.
we are, decoding a big topic.
Mm.
We are talking about trauma today and grief and therapy. So, Havovi, let's get into today's conversation. I want to start with understanding trauma because trauma has so many forms that it presents itself in our life, that it shows up in our life. What exactly is trauma? What qualifies as trauma?
Let's first go back to the word trauma. The word trauma means wound. Okay. I know you're a fan of Gabor Mate. So am I. We love
Big
him.
time.
His work resonates with the world. And so, trauma, as he explains, is not what happens to you, It is the response your inner world has had to the external environment that has been hard on you, has been hard on your human experience of sorts. So that is the response. It's an internal response. That's what trauma is. Now, trauma shows up in various ways. There's physical, there's emotional, there's sexual. These are the ones that we know by far and large, obviously.
Most common ways that the trauma shows up. So you said it's a wound. Now, a wound can be of these classifications. What separates a trauma from, let's say, just a painful situation or just the genuine sadness?
Trauma stays with you. Trauma is pervasive. It's not something that leaves you. It's not that, oh, I let me compare it like this. Let me be a little more tangible. If I've had an accident, it's going to stay with me. If I fell down, I may be able to forget, right? So that is a very physical, tangible way of explaining this to you. That trauma is something also that can be very, very chronic. There have been people who've been living in that particular way throughout their lives. So it stays in your body, you carry it. And unfortunately, at some point, you just become it. And that's what I've seen in most cases that have come to me, at least in my practice, that that's just the reality of things.
However, how present are we to our trauma? Do we really know that we are under trauma or we have a long-standing trauma that is guiding our behavior or our experience of life?
A lot of people live in denial. A lot of people live in denial. Man, woman, both. It can be any gender, all right? It can be anybody. They are living in denial most of the time because they think that this is life. This is how it is. This is the schema of things now. So that is how it is.
What is denial and why do people deny their trauma?
They don't see a way out. They're not able to see a way out. It's difficult, right? Like, if I don't have any options, where do I go? A lot of people choose to live in denial. And I'll go back to, let's go to the topic of how people sort of process trauma. Okay. We have our central nervous system. We have a fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. This is the way we process things in our system. When certain things happen to us, these are our responses.
So explain them in depth,
Yes.
all these four.
So imagine that we are sitting here, we're sitting in this lovely studio, and a lion walks in. Okay. Now, one of us is going to jump and sort of find a way out from here. Okay. Another one is going to be like, okay, maybe I'll throw the camera at this lion, right? So that is fight. Okay. Then you have flight, trying to run out from here, finding a door, finding a passage, finding a window, probably jumping out for your life. Freeze. We've been told, right? Like the instinct is, okay, animal is there, don't move. So you're doing the logical thing and you're just freezing. So that's what freezing is, that you just freeze. You sort of also detach in your body. A lot of times you will come across cases where people are like, why didn't you do something at that time? That is freezing. You know what to do, but you're unable to do it. That's freezing, which is a very, very common response a lot of people don't talk about. Okay. And then the least spoken about is fawning. Fawning is befriending a traumatic experience. We have a lot of people going through chronic violence on a daily basis, and they befriend it because there is no other option, unfortunately. Where are they going to go? What are they going to do? Where will they seek refuge? They will be on the road. These are all very real things. That's why people stay back till they are able to actually find a way to get out. So yes, it's very heavy, it's very sad, but this is the reality that is out there, unfortunately. And then just that's just what you know. That's just what you know. And that's just how you cope. And in fawning, what also happens is, again, and this is actually for trauma, you detach from your sense of self. You continuously detach. You are not in your skin at all. That's what trauma does to you. Your sense of self gets distorted.
Then, if you're not yourself, or if you're not living with who you are, who do you really live with? What do you live with?
Hmm. You live with a lot of pain. You live with a person that people think you are, or you live with a person who is accepted into that environment, unfortunately, who, seeks
So,
refuge,
instead of
unfortunately.
being who you are, because you don't know who you are anymore, you start being what is expected of you.
What is expected and what is accepted.
Hmm.
And that's just a coping mechanism at that point in time.
I feel a lot of us are behaving in a manner that we are trying to please people. We are trying to prove our worth to people. Is that related to trauma?
It definitely could be that, you are expected to be a certain way, and therefore, like, I know of cases where food is dependent on your behavior. If you don't behave a certain way, you don't get food, or you get food. So,
You have worked with people in prisons, you have worked with the police and things, authorities. So I can imagine that, seeing all of this at that level, and also at our homes, this could be a very usual things happening at home as well, where you are denied certain basic things or basic rights, which could be even the right to talk,
mhm,
that I'm not going to talk to you if you behave like this.
absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
And that goes back to Gabor's work, right? We're talking about attachment and we're talking about authenticity. And these are the things that people require when they're babies, right? To sort of be who you are and to be accepted. And when your environment doesn't facilitate that, you have to become something else or someone else. So your core is left.
Yeah, so when you don't have a sense of self and when you don't know who you really are, where is your window to be really authentic? How do you be authentic? What do you hold yourself account for? What are your guiding principles? You don't know who you are. Then how do you navigate through this?
As a psychotherapist, when you start working with people who have PTSD, who've gone through a lot of trauma, chronic trauma, uh, you know, they start, they also have certain ways that they've behaved in life. And they've started also treating the environment the way they were treated, right? So, for example, if I've come from a space of continuous aggression and violence, I will display continuous aggression and violence. The other part is that I could be extremely subservient. So those are different directions that people go into.
Either you become like how you were treated, or you
Yes.
become the opposite of what you should be,
Yes.
or your at least your understanding of what you should be or who you should be.
Yeah, because you're adapting. The thing about people is that they adapt. And if you feel like that is your gut call, that I'm accepted in this environment because, I'm supposed to take it, unfortunately, what do? A lot of people say, oh, you have a choice. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes there is no way out. Sometimes the door is open, but you don't know how to walk out. You don't know how to walk out. You will need a hand to say, come, let me show you that there is a way to get out. And that's when people come. That's when people come and say, I want to get out of it. I don't know how to do it. And it is scary. I don't know where to start. It is not your job. It is my job. It is the job of a mental health practitioner. It is the job of a trauma informed therapist to sort of help you navigate through it, because you've lived this life that has been dictated and, thrown upon you, and you've done what you could. And now we are sort of reworking that whole script, which is very scary. Going into the unknown is very, very scary for a lot of people, right? And a lot of people also have a tendency to become hyper independent. So it's very difficult for them to trust people and to take someone's hand and be like, okay, I'm going to walk. You can help me. I'll walk with you. I will trust you. Because you then just become this person who's able to, sort of give to people, but you don't know how to receive. Your environment has never taught you how to receive, right? So hyper independence is a trauma response in most cases. The other one is addiction. Addiction. And again, going back to Gabor's work, it is something that gives you a positive relief with a negative consequence, a longer term negative consequence, right? So when we're talking about drugs and we're talking about liquor and alcohol and daru, right? We're talking about all these things. We know that they're bad. But what are they doing for you? What are they doing for you? What they're doing for you is temporarily they're giving you a hug. That's what they're doing. And that's why it's easy to go down that road. Because neurologically, that's exactly what it does. It is there to sort of relieve you of your pain, of your reality, to take that off.
Even if it is gone for just a few hours, you find so much relief there that you start practicing it and you become addicted to that sort of a lifestyle.
Yeah. And then when you sit to sort of introspect, like, what is it doing for you? Like when we are working with addiction and trauma, you need to sit and understand, what is this addiction doing for this person? Why is it there? We don't just judge people. You can't just judge anyone without, sort of knowing their backstory and what is going on. It's important to understand, okay, this person is heavily into drinking. What is happening there? What is this void, or what is the crutch there for? It's a crutch. It's a crutch. But unfortunately, there are a lot of negative consequences that happen. We know that alcohol, drugs, you do it long enough, you're killing your system, you're killing your nervous system, you're killing your biology, you're killing your growth, you're killing everything.
So the longer you stay with a trauma, you live a trauma, the longer you have kind of attuned yourself to live in a certain manner and you become used to that manner of living. And I've also observed that people feel that that is the only way of living.
Yes, and you will also see people finding the same space again. You will see a lot of people who come, and it's not a blanket statement, but it just happens to be so common and palpable and observable. People who come from broken homes, sometime the aim is to have a happy home, but somewhere down the line, it becomes a broken home. Not to say that they do it, sometimes they enter it, sometimes it could happen at a very unconscious level that it gets sort of translated. It could be anything.
So I was working with a couple of people who came from a broken home, parents divorced pretty early in the life, and one person came from a family where a parent died pretty early in the life, right? So they came from those homes and they could see what their individual voids in life were. And now, when they got into their own marriages, they forcibly wanted to make it work, even if it was falling apart. So that is also one response that we see. Your intention might be very good. You're trying to, bring all the pieces of puzzle together and give a wholesome environment that
Yeah,
you
you're
think is a
desperate
wholesome.
to make it work. And,
Yeah.
we also see, especially in the Indian context, what we see is that uh, people are really, really trying to make it work, right? And full marks to them. But what they're also doing is that you are showing your children that this is okay, that this is acceptable. Like, yes, one side will say that, okay, this is resilience, you work through things. Yeah, great. But you're also saying that it's okay to be unhappy and continue in unhappy relationships. It's okay that there's violence at home. You are saying you're normalizing a lot of things which are actually not okay. It's okay to exit. I'm sure, like, we'll get a lot of heat for saying this, given that we come from our collectivistic society that believes that no matter what, you should make it work. Why? If you are not okay, it's okay to leave. It's absolutely fine, given that the circumstances. I know it's very easy to say that, okay, get up and leave. No, be mindful when you're leaving, for sure. For sure, find a way out. There is a way out. Sit with somebody. If you are not able to think about it, find someone who you can talk to, whether it's a friend or whether it's a confidant or whether it's a therapist. see what is the way out. Sometimes you will not be able to see, because sometimes you can be very heavily programmed in not finding a way out. You don't even know that. Then someone will be able to give you a solution, right? When we are caught up in our nervous system and we're extremely anxious, you're not going to be able to see a way out. You're going to have to get another perspective over there.
I mean, you could be very clear about the outcome that you want, and that is not a broken home. You
Yeah.
want to make it work, but you don't know the process of it, how
Yes.
to go about it. And
Yes.
in that whole thing of just making it work, just to contain everything in a box,
Yeah.
you're disrupting everything and the
Yeah.
whole
The
environment and the
the ideal
ecosystem.
situation versus the real situation are very different. And you know, that's what people come to therapy for as well. That, this is the ideal situation and this is the real situation, and it's the in between that is very distressing, right? We go back to like a little Rogerian therapy, and that's what it says, the ideal version of you versus the real version of you. And people come because it's the in between that tears you. When both of these come together, it's the mid ground that you are coming for, right? Where can we make the ideal and the real meet?
Yeah, these lines are so blurry, Havovi, and I understand the challenge because we go through life in a manner that these all scenarios come to us, all of us, right? You don't know where to draw this line. That's a classic problem with everyone, that should I be at this side of the spectrum, of that side of the spectrum, or there is some middle ground, or a 60-40 or a 70-30. What is workable? How do you navigate through these blurry lines?
It's very subjective. Sometimes it is as clear as you have to cut it out. You have to cut it out from your life. Today, if you had gangrene in your foot, you would cut it off, right? So that your leg doesn't get infected. You have to treat it in that manner. It sounds a little harsh, right? But it is what it is. You need to figure out how you want to live. You will continuously have blurry lines. You will. And it's very subjective to each person.
I want to talk about therapy in depth and also in context of couples as well. And I will come to that conversation because that's an increasingly, prevalent problems that we are seeing. But firstly, because we are talking about trauma, I have another question that's coming to my mind. What, according to you, are common triggers for your trauma? Sometimes, like, I'll tell you where I'm coming from a very personal experience. Like, when you are moving on in your everyday life, you don't know, and you're not in the awareness, you're not open to your trauma, you're just doing your things everyday basis. Like, it so happened to me that there used to be this one ad of Surf Excel, which used to be like daag achhe hain. So a kid who goes out to play and dirties his clothes and come back home, and then the parent or the grandparent encourages him that, wow, daag achhe hain. And I would see that ad. It's a 20-second, 30-second ad, and I would cry profusely. I was like, why is it happening to me? Why am I getting so much emotion from seeing this one ad? Then when I reflected upon it, observed myself, what is it kind of triggering within me? It felt that I never got that thing ki daag achhe hain. Like, you could make a mistake and come back home, and it's okay, daag achhe hain. You're still okay, and I'll help you out, or I'll take care of it for you, or you are still, accepted as who you are. So it would trigger that response in me, just a random ad on television.
I mean, it could be anything, right? Because that's just how the brain registers things. Like, I have a friend who is traumatized by grass. She's traumatized by grass because she had a very, very unfortunate experience in a garden. So she cannot walk on grass today. And if you go to like European countries, there's grass everywhere. How do you walk? How do you navigate? Right? It can be literally anything. There are people who come and tell me like food items trigger them, food triggers them. Just the thought of eating or not eating triggers them. And that is really, really difficult because these are the basic necessities of life. They really struggle because it becomes such a condition, right? And that's difficult. That is very difficult. And you need to work through these little things when people come for therapy, like their association with these triggers, whether it's even important and whether they want to work on it. So, obviously, food, primitive need, right? We all need to eat food. How do you get over that? You work on it. What is the association? You decode it. and then you recode it.
However, I understand that it's difficult for you or us to discuss about particular triggers because they could be different for different people. But help me out understanding few clear signs that you are processing your trauma without even knowing about it. What I'm trying to ask is, how does trauma show up in our everyday life? How does it manifest?
Trauma shows up in all sorts of ways, right? Like just the basic communication. How do you talk to people? How do people respond to you? What do your relationships look like? Do you have friendships? Do you have relationships? If you have relationships, are they broken relationships? Are you able to be there? Is the other person that you are choosing, is that person healthy for you? These are all telltale signs. These are all telltale signs. These are almost the most immediate ones. How you treat yourself as well, right? When it comes down to self care, treating yourself right, it could be like taking yourself out for a movie or buying yourself something. I know a lot of people who've been through trauma who are very easy with other people. When it comes to giving things to people, it'll come very easily. They'll just go into the pocket and be like, तेरे को ये चाहिए, you want this, I'll give it to you right now. But when it comes to themselves, they're not able to do it because they never knew, they were never taught.
I feel you're talking about a lot of mothers. Aren't they giving all the time? And when it comes to choosing something for themselves, buying a piece of clothing or anything of their choice, they just refrain.
Yeah, they do. They do. Now, I mean, when it comes to mothers and motherhood, now that's a very different topic as such. But there are a lot of like attachment styles that we teach our kids as well, right? Like as caregivers, and that is another topic by itself. So
So basically, what I'm understanding out of this context is that people who are giving out a lot, they should also revisit their reasons for giving.
definitely, definitely, giving. It sounds very, very weird because we grew up in this culture where we are taught giving means you're a good person. You're a good human being. You are validated for being a giver. So, and receivers have, I read, it's very profound. Receivers have no boundaries. Takers have no boundaries. So, givers have to make boundaries. And if you are not, so giving also as a part of a trauma response, right? Because you've been giving, 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 you have been accepted into a particular environment because you've been a giver, right? You do particular things in particular ways, you grow up before your time, you have to become an adult when you are, let's say, a 6-year old. You're continuously giving physically, monetarily, you know anyway you're continuously giving, and that's how you are accepted. So even when you grow up, when you want love, or when you want anything, when you want any sense of communication also, you think giving is okay, and that's how you become an excessive giver.
So when I give more, it could be your time, money, attention, things. You feel that if you give more, people will like you.
Yes,
People will accept you as a
it gives
friend.
you a sense of value and sort of like validation, right? Like, look at me, I'm a giver. Everyone doesn't say it like this and they don't say it out loud, but I'm giving. This is what I've learned. This is what the brain learns. You give, you get. You give, you get. The more you give, the more you get.
Whether you get more or not, but you think
Yes.
that you would get more if you give
Yes.
more.
And that's another thing, right? No matter how much you give, sometimes even if and that's, we talk about like love crumbing, right? Uh, you walk 9, I'll give you 1. And that's also okay for so many people. And they stay back. And they stay back in relationships. They're in love with love.
This whole idea of givers trying to give indefinitely and saying that, oh, I don't expect anything in return. Do you think that is possible? Because a lot of givers out there, they would say that I do it because I'm so happy doing it and I don't expect anything in
A
return.
lot of people say that. And some people actually do love giving, and it is great. But understand that if you just keep giving, you will burn out. I've seen it in the decade of practice that I've had, I've seen it a lot. I've seen people give, not receive, also say, this is my role. This is not your role. Your role can change. You can adapt. And also, they don't know how to ask, right? They don't know how to ask.
Right.
And it's scary to change. And there's a fear, right? What if I ask one day and this person says no to me? The system won't be able to tolerate it.
And there's also a thing of selective giving. You are a giver, but you are okay to give to certain people, could be your parents, could be your spouse, could be your friends, but you're not okay to give to certain other people. And that's where you question that, what am I getting? And then people call you out for being different.
Sure, I'm
That
different,
is also a situation that, happens.
which is fine.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, in fact, this is such a common conversation I have, in my office, which is uh people who don't give. Or let's say you've come for therapy, you've changed as a person, you've been a giver, and now you've stopped giving, right? People will call you selfish. I tell my clients very openly, say that my therapist was waiting for you to say that to me. It's a compliment. For some people, it's selfish. For some people, it's self preservation. Why can't we look at it as self preservation? Right? We've not been taught that. We've been taught giving makes you a good human being. No one has taught you that boundaries makes a good, healthy human being. We're not talking about health only.
So we have addressed one misconception here, that is also a trauma response, that is giving. Indefinitely giving is also a trauma response. So the people who are watching us, I would request them to pause for a couple of seconds and kind of reflect in their life and try to see these patterns for themselves, because sometimes they are our default behavior,
And sometimes it's not even about trauma. Some people have not gone through any sort of trauma, but it's what they've learned from their parents or the sorry, or from their caregivers, that they've seen a caregiver or a parent who've been excessively giving. And I will always ask, because apples don't fall far from trees, right? Who are you like? I will always ask you, where have you learned this from? And that's when they pause and they're like, oh my, I'm like my mom or I'm like my dad. And they're givers, and now they're like really old, and they wonder like no one's there to give them anything.
even if your giving is not a trauma response, you've not gone through a trauma to behave like that, maybe you have learned it from your ecosystem, then also excessive giving could kind of invite trauma in your life, which is like it's a human need to kind of feel accepted,
And
irrespective
validated,
of,
right?
yeah,
Like, and
irrespective of giving also, right?
yeah, like, I mean, you want a sense of value,
Mm,
and everyone loves being told that, oh, I love you, because, you've
mm,
given them a gift and they say, I love you. People love that.
mm. Because your core, your inner self, your inner being knows that, if I'm just being loved in a transaction, or
Mhm.
am I being loved for who I am? And your inner compass knows which
Your
one of the
inner
two it
compass
is.
knows.
Which one of the two it is. So
Yeah.
as long as you are giving and getting the love in return, even if the love is there in return in the tangible physical form, your inner compass knows that the day I stop giving,
And it's
it's going to
important,
change.
like, people don't realize how important these transactions are, especially like in couples, not just in couples, and honestly, in any relationship, transactions are there. They're very much there, and they're cyclical, and it just keeps things alive. No one gets taken for granted here. We don't want anyone to feel like we're taking them for granted, right? A lot of us feel like that. There's this uh I've given, so obviously you have to give me. No, how do I know I have to give you? Did you tell me? You didn't tell me. How do I know? Apparently, it's understood. I have 50 couples coming in and talking to me about the same thing. Oh,
Yeah.
but I did this.
Mm,
Okay. But he should have done that. He should have. He did not.
yeah. You're expecting them to read between the lines.
Yeah. And I urge people to sit and speak, whether it's a couple or whether it's a parent child relationship. Sit and talk. Sit and talk. The whole problem lies is that, oh, but you should understand. बच्चे को समझ में नहीं आने वाला है. The child is not going to understand. It's very simple. That's a child there. The child works on authenticity. The child is going to do what the child wants to do. It doesn't know right from wrong, right? So you have to teach.
If you are new to this channel, then I have a simple data to share with you. 92% of the people who are listening to us or are watching us are not our subscribers yet. So please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share, because your support to our podcast helps us reach a wider audience. It also helps us in getting more and more experienced guests for you so that more learning can happen. And it also motivates us to keep continue to be on this journey of creating more and more meaningful episodes for you. Thank you for your support. And now let's get into today's episode. How do we start practicing authenticity in our life today, where we are? Like the people who are watching this,
Hmm.
wherever they are in their life, their career, their relationships,
Hmm.
their physical health, wherever they are, if they want to deeply understand the meaning of authenticity and practice in their life, how does authenticity look in practice?
Good question. I would, so we place a lot of value on everything that we do, on our tangibles, on, let's say, being a doctor, being a lawyer, right? On our work, on the posts that we hold, on the cars that we have, the houses that we have. If I take away all of these things, who are you?
We start identifying with these things, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
no, that's our relationship. That's who we are. No, you are not that. You are not your job. You're not your cars. You are not your home. You're not.
Then who are we?
Who are you? Sit and think. Like, very often I ask people, if you were to say three things about yourself, honestly, what are those three things? I cannot tell you how long people take to answer that question because they don't know who they are. They just don't know. So start building a connection with yourself. If you don't know your favorite color, and your favorite color is whatever maybe your child's color is, or maybe your spouse's favorite color is, it's the same color, question it. Is that really your color? I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it is to make people understand that who are you without everything, all of these tangibles? Who are you left with? Yourself. Who is that person?
Through this conversation, what we're trying to establish is a blueprint for who we are. I mean,
Mhm.
at least questioning it will open a space or a window in your life to think a little more deeply with awareness.
Absolutely. And that is literally my first conversation with most people that come to me. I tell them I'm here to listen. I'm trying to make a blueprint of you so I'm able to help you in the best possible manner. And that's exactly the word I use, blueprint. Into the wiring, into the architecture of the person. What makes you you? What is your journey? Right? Let's go with it.
Let's go within.
Yeah.
That's what this whole podcast is, based on.
Yeah.
Trying to improve our lives, make our lives more meaningful, more fulfilled
Yeah.
by trying to reflect within and finding our answers that who am I? Why do I behave the way I do? Why do I react the way I
Yeah.
do?
And most times people are not authentic because they're so scared of rejection. They're so scared that today, if I say I want this and I don't want this, or I am this person and I'm not this person, they're scared, right? Like, because at the end of the day, we want to be attached to certain people and we want certain things from those certain people. So it becomes conditional. It does become conditional, and then it just becomes a way of life.
This is what I was getting at as my next question, that when you're practicing authenticity, when you're setting boundaries for yourself, and you're defining what you'll give and what you'll ask for and what is accepted by you, when you are taking the reins in your hands and defining things how they will go for you, then in that whole process, how do you kind of account for this kind of behavior? That are you becoming too full of yourself? Are you becoming too gloated in your own glory that, oh, now I'm living an authentic life, so I am allowed to behave like this?
Mm.
Is it a healthy sense of self, or is it just
Uh,
another coping mechanism?
I will say that any change, right? Like, if we have been living in a relationship where one person has been a giver and one person has been a taker, and I disrupt that, okay, by saying I'm done. I've gone and disrupted things. People don't like the idea of disruption. They find it very rebellious. But there's a good rebellious and there's a bad rebellious. Understand that. What is the cause? If you are going to disrupt things, what is the cause? Don't just be disruptful for the sake of being disruptful. That's just mindless behavior.
Mm.
And there needs to be communication, that, and let it be fluent communication. Don't talk when you are hostile. I will say just start with that. I tell a lot of couples also, and I tell a lot of people also when they come in, let's say with children or just two friends coming in to sort something out, talk when you're ready and receptive. If you're going to talk and scream and shout, no one's going to listen. Are you ready to listen to what I have to say? Are you actually going to listen to me? That's a different headspace. And it is going to disrupt. It is a disruptive idea. Like, you will feel like, oh, this person who was giving was so nice, because that's what we tag people as. All of a sudden, this person has become full of themselves. They want it like this, they don't want it any other way. No, you don't have to be so reactive. Be responsive. There's a big, big difference between being reactive and responsive.
Another thing that is coming to my mind right now is resentment. You know, let's say you lived with toxic parents. You have come to the acceptance of the idea that, certain behaviors that were pushed on you was not okay, was toxic. How do you live with the same people at the same time you don't resent them?
It's difficult. It's very difficult. There are people doing their duty by staying with their parents who've caused a lot of harm on them. And then there are people who've made hard choices and they have left. And, both are different truths. There is no one size fits all here.
And there's no right answer for
There
this,
is no right answer for this. There's no right answer for this. And, as a therapist, you can't always tell people what to do. You can say, this is what I think. And then the ball is in their court. Unless it's something extremely like detrimental to society, or harm to themselves or to somebody else, right? Then that becomes different. But this resentment is very hard. Those who are going to choose to stay back, maybe you want to think about working on forgiveness. Can you actually forgive someone who has disrupted your sense of self?
Mm.
Can you do it? It is a hard journey. And there is no, I tell everybody, psychotherapy is not a progressive chart. It's not an upward graph. It is like an ECG. It could be like a really bad heart attack as well. It could be anything. It
Mm.
could be anything, because, you're taking new shape, new form.
Learning to live with resentment is something which is very difficult to arrive at, but at the same time it's a necessary problem to solve, because you can't go on
It
cutting off people
is.
out of your life.
It is. It is. It is. So be mindful when you are going to do it. Be very, very mindful. One is that people obviously don't like the thought of, living alone.
Mm.
We are social creatures. We want people. It's hard. It's hard to create a new ecosystem. I tell a lot of people who come to me, who have had trauma from parents, sometimes it's important to cut out, and you can adopt parents. Today, when people are adopting kids, why can't you adopt parents?
Wow, these are very new ideas.
They are. They are.
It's a very strong perspective to
It's
arrive
a
at.
very strong perspective, but it has saved so many lives. It has saved so many lives, because this thought doesn't enter your mind, right? These are not conversations people have on a daily.
No, but if you really look into your life, you would have people who connect more with their tauji, chacha, or some relative, or some teacher, or somebody else.
And, those are the mother figures and those are the father figures. And those become your parents. Parents is not just biology and DNA.
Particularly in Indian context, there will be certain relationships, mostly if the parent is toxic or
Mm-hmm.
the child is toxic.
Mm-hmm.
In this relationship, people feel that it does not come with an exit gate.
Mm.
Other relationships, like earlier marriages also fell into this very same category.
Yeah.
Now that divorces are happening and they have increased in number, and people are normalizing these conversations about having your own identity in a marriage and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
but still this one relationship that is between a parent and a child, where either party is exhibiting toxicity or is exhibiting the traits which are detrimental to the other being, the exit game here is like still
It's
very
hard.
unconventional.
It's
And
very hard. It's very unconventional. It will be viewed as rebellious. You will be ostracized for it. People are not going to take to it kindly. But you need to decide what kind of a life do you want to live. You need to decide that. And I will tell everybody who is in this position, and a lot of people are in this position. And one of the biggest things is that financial dependence.
Mm.
Become financially independent, find a way out.
At this point where we are talking about these newer ideas, and we
Mm.
are not saying you have to adapt them in your life,
Mm-hmm.
it's just one idea that we are discussing.
Mm.
I want my audience to know that this is for a little mature audience to capture. This is not for you when you're 18, 20-year old and you don't
No,
have perspective about life, and
it is definitely not for everyone, and it is not a one size fits all. Don't be like, I saw a podcast and I said, I can exit. No, you can't. It has to be thought through.
Mm.
You need to figure out what is your plan A, plan B, plan C. You know, you might feel inspired after seeing this, but it might not go your way. So definitely sit with someone who is a professional, who's able to help you introspect and see.
What I'm trying to tell my audiences here is that it's an evolved conversation.
Yes,
It's
it is.
not a conversation that has been doing rounds for years, and that's what we have grown up to.
Mm.
So this is an evolved conversation. So instead of judging it, or instead of calling it out, because that's what people do, how
Yeah,
did you
they
do
do.
this, chest beating, that,
Yeah.
oh, what is this idea, we've never heard it, what nonsense are you
Yeah.
talking?
No, and it is also, you know, oh, एक घर में दो चूल्हे, two stoves in one home. I've heard the gamut of things. I've heard a ton of things. And people are choosing to live in toxicity versus, living two separate lives and being at peace. Like, what are these priorities? And let me tell you, if that's what you're going to do to yourself, it's almost a guarantee this is what you are going to pass down to the future generations. It's all transgenerational. Your parents have done it, your grandparents have done it, but the formula doesn't work. At one point, you're going to live in a society where these formulas are going to be redundant. They're not going to work anymore. And it's already happening. The wave is there. It is there. A lot of people are doing different things. It's rebellious. People are outcasted for sure.
People are trying to break out of their generational trauma
Yes.
also. People are
Yes.
opting to not marry. People are opting to not
Yes.
have kids. People are opting to not live with their parents or live with a partner. And all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of, solutions and ways people have figured out.
Yeah.
I don't know what's healthy, what's not, and we are nowhere to, say
See
for
what's
anybody
good for
else.
you. Like I'll
Yeah.
say, see what's good for you and keep revisiting it. 1 year you might be like, I don't want to get married. That's fine. Then the year after, you're like, I think I need someone.
Mm.
That's also fine.
Mm.
That's also okay.
Yeah.
And you
So
can change because that's just human nature.
yeah, so these are not the proposed solutions, but these are just the thoughts.
These are
We are
just thoughts.
we are doing thought experimentation here with evolved thoughts, that how can we approach solving trauma from a newer perspective.
Absolutely. And to be very honest with you, there are some very, let's just say old timers who are very rebellious and they've done it. And, we learn from their examples and, it sort of trickles down. And that's where it comes from that if this person who's like 40 years my senior can cut ties with his toxic parents, what are we doing here? Why are we indulging in this? And yes, it's all very easy to say, and it's not easy to do because people come from different stratas of society with different backgrounds. It's not a one size fits all. No one is claiming that. But see what's good for you and what you can do. If you can get a foot out the door, it's a possibility.
Mm. So what is a clear-cut sign or an indicator where you know that I need help, or I need to resolve this for myself? When do you know to not stretch your boundaries and fit
Hmm.
in the toxicity in your life? And when do you know to cut it out?
Just observe your state of being. Are you happy where you are? Just start with that. Look at yourself. Look at yourself emotionally. Look at yourself physically. Are you happy where you are? Like, one of the first things, like, I encourage a lot of people to come into my office and talk to me, because it says a lot to me. It says a lot to me about the person, about how they treat themselves, the way they look, the way they carry themselves, things like that. Your self care, right? These are clinical markers. These are not just, oh, I've created the standard. No, these are actual clinical markers that we see, like the posture of a person, the facial expression of a person, how they behave in conversation. Are they able to keep eye contact, not keep eye contact? There are a ton of things. There are a ton of things.
What is the formula for happiness? How do you spell out happiness in a
Happiness
definition?
is so subjective, and uh, you know, I just feel like one man's wine is another man's poison, right? Like, that's what it is for most things, actually. And think at the core of you. I will ask you to think from your gut, not from your intellect, right? Like, intellectually we can say that, oh yeah, let's play sport, and this is the sport, and this makes you happy. A lot of people put their kids into sport saying this will make them happy. That's an intellectual thing. Did you ask your child what makes the kid happy? They'll tell you from their gut. They'll tell you from their heart. They won't tell you from their intellect. Ask yourself from here, ask yourself from here, and see what comes. Your intellect, you'll rationalize. Your gut, that's a different story.
It's very difficult to, rationalize with our gut.
Yeah.
Your gut instinctive feeling that you have from within is so strong that even if you are doing everything intellectually as it is, or as it should be on paper, yet
Yeah.
there's this some feeling which is triggering you to
Yeah. And I've
to
seen a
believe
lot
that
of
it's not
people
the
be
right thing.
successful on paper tigers,
Mm.
right? But when it comes to their emotions, it's a void. It's dead. Who are you? You don't know.
Mm.
Yeah, you telling me you are your CV? No. Come on.
Mm. Give me a framework to answer this question. Who are we? What are the questions that I should ask myself to come to an answer of
Mm.
who am I?
You know, recently, I think during the pandemic itself, there's been a surge of journaling. And I think that's a beautiful starting point, because what it does is that it makes things so real, like at a system, like at a nervous system level, your amygdala is processing certain things at all times. That's like your emotional center. Also, the art of writing is gone. How many of us actually have handwritings that are intact right now, right? We're so
Me.
used to, like, I love my handwriting. So we're so used to like typing and all of these things, and kids in the first grade, second grade, it does something. It's your your executive memory, the working memory that is involved in writing. So please continue writing, and it makes things real. Pen to paper, go old school, make things real. Just start with, who am I? Just start with a question, who am I? If I take away my CV, if I take away my belongings, if I take away everything, and if I am supposed to sit in solitude, who am I? Who is this person? What are the three things that define this person?
Mm.
Just start with that, and you'll see it'll start flowing out. And there are tons of writing prompts and journals and all of these things. Like, one of my personal favorites is Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. I think that's a beautiful concept. It's really, really nice. Basically, it's based on, in life, if everything was a green light, what would you do? Where would you be?
Yeah.
And what would that look like?
Yeah. If you had all the money in the world,
If you
what
had
would you
everything
do?
aligned the way you wanted, green lights.
Yeah, they say, if you had all the time in the world and all the money in the world, what would you still
I think
do?
my favorite is also, if you knew you were never going to fail, or you're not going to fail, what is it that you would do?
Mm.
That's a great one. And deduct. Go deductively. How will you get there? Try it. Just put pen to paper.
When you ask these questions to yourself, you arrive at the intuition level answers, not the
Mm.
perception level answers.
Yeah.
The two things we're talking about. One is the perception that is happening in the mind,
Yeah.
that is based on the intellect.
Intellect.
And the second is the gut instinct, that is intuition, listening to your own inner.
Yeah.
Now, where does this voice come from? Who dictates it? What happens? That's altogether a different, conversation,
It
and a
is,
whole
it
big
is. It is a
chapter.
different conversation, but your mind and your gut are connected. Like this is another one that's doing a lot of rounds, right? Because there is a connection over there. There is a neural pathway over there. This is perceptual, okay, but as you go down, this is less is perceptual, less intellectual. Obviously, it has a certain level limitations, right? So, but it will tell you, it will speak to you in its own way. Maybe it will not have words, but it will warn you. Today, if you were out living in the wild, it's your gut that is going to save you. It's not going to be your intellect.
Wow, that's such a profound thing. I'm imagining what you just said, and I'm thinking if I'm in the wild, whether it'll be the intellect or the
Yeah,
gut.
think about it like early man, right? What were the two things that early man was scared of? Lightning and
And the
heights.
right.
It didn't only come from intellect. That's how we found caves. That this will protect me. This is on ground, right? That did not just come from intellect, it came from somewhere else.
I also want to ask you that what is a real fight and what is an imaginary fight?
Mm.
You know, what is what is the real thing that you're addressing and what is it that you have cooked up in your head that you're dealing with? I'm just talking about the real fear and the perception of a probable fear.
Yeah, so that's a good question because that's where the other person can possibly help you professionally, right? Whether to see is this your anxiety speaking? Because when we're constantly living in the future, yes, there are some things that are extremely probable, okay? And you call them out. You call them out. But then there are things that will be like doomsday. Like, oh my God, it will get amplified, it will get exaggerated. It will be. And that's when, somebody is able to help you to call it out, saying, is that your anxiety? Are you scared? What's going on? Is there a
Right.
fear over there? Then you work with that fear. What is that fear? Is that fear a good fear? Is it actually cautioning you? Is that rumbling in your tummy, saying that, is there something there? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? All feelings are not bad. Sometimes they protect you.
I wanted you to bring in the angle of neurosis and psychosis as well.
Sure.
What is the real thing that is happening in your physical, mental, emotional body, and
Right.
what is your imagination? And illustrate with an example.
Sure. Okay, fine. So, generally, now this is clinically speaking, right? In clinical disorders, we have two parts. One is the psychotic spectrum, and the other is the neurotic spectrum. When we talk about the psychotic spectrum, we talk about not being in touch with reality. So, very common example, paranoid schizophrenia. The person is not in touch with reality. They're able to see things or they're able to hear things which you and I, who are in touch with reality, we don't experience. Okay. However, you have anxiety, you have depression, you are in touch with reality. Those are on the spectrum of neurosis.
Even in the neurosis case,
Mm-hmm.
when you really have something going on, like an anxiety or depression,
Mm-hmm.
even then the anxiety starts with a thought. So whether that thought is real or not, or it is real for you and it is not real for the rest of the
See,
world, it's like a
again,
whole spectrum. How
again,
do you go about
clinically
it?
speaking, it could be a fear, it could be a fear, it could be probable, it could be there.
Mm.
I'm not saying things like if I fight with my parents, they're going to be pink elephants flying.
What I'm arriving at over and over again is these blurry lines.
Mm.
And I feel it's important to highlight these blurry lines because a lot of things that we put in the box of right or wrong are actually happening lesser in the relationships today. Let's say physical abuse, physical violence
Mm.
is
Mm.
completely non accepted.
Mm.
But most of the relationships, majority of relationships are not going through physical violence. They are going through another trauma of sorts, which is more
Yeah.
emotional, which is more this
Yeah.
thing, and where you don't have the boundary that how much
Yeah.
of asking, how much of giving, all the things that we've talked about in this podcast. You can't define that this much I bring, this much you bring, and there's no concrete line here. So the viewers who are going through these situations in their life and they're feeling that, I am not taken care of, or it's unjustified, or I am taken advantage of, for them to kind of sought help for themselves, kind of
Mm.
seek some guidance in life to see that is it your definition, which is kind of, is it your purview about your own life, which is like you are a victim, or if you really are a victim, how to kind of sought help
Mm.
there.
I think a lot of people already know if there is trauma or they are stuck in toxic relationships. They're scared to move out. Those who live in denial, maybe that has been their reality and they have accepted it. Okay. It's not quantifiable, to be very honest with you. It's what you want to do with these blurry lines. What do you want to do? If you're not happy in your skin, what do you want to do? Do you want to do something about it? There could be a ton of people telling you, you need to get help, get help, get help. The choice is yours, whether you want to listen or no. So that's a very, very big one. And I think, uh, just as a thing, like in the beginning of the year, we all go for physical checkups. January health packages, we do the whole spectrum body checkup, MRI karo, whether you need it or not doesn't matter. Go to a therapist also. Go to a therapist. See whether you need a session, whether you need two, whether you need three. That person will tell you. That person will tell you, yeah, these are things that we probably need to work on. These are things probably for later. Or there is just nothing. I've had a ton of people who've said, ma'am, we don't know whether we need therapy or no. Could you help us? Could you tell us? I've said, sure. We do a session and we realize that no, everything's fine. Everything's all right. Okay. So, going back to the thing that you were talking, that, there is a probability. Am I making it up? Is this a real fight? Is this something fictitious in my mind? I'm able to sort of, from where I stand, and it's my judgment call, say that right now seems fine. However, if it does come up, let's talk about it. I'm available here.
Although we have already talked about therapy in this conversation so far,
Mm.
I also want you to, at this point, define therapy for me. What is therapy? Because a lot of people don't know what therapy is.
Yeah.
They think it's some mumbo jumbo, talking to somebody, some airy fairy stuff, which is
Chai
for
pe
the rich
charcha. I've
people.
heard all sorts of things.
Yeah.
I've heard chai pe charcha, and a lot of people have a lot of expectations from therapists, which are, like unicorns, but we'll get there. So, therapy for me is goal oriented. I tell everybody that you've come to me with something that's not working for you. You will see tangible solutions and conclusions by the end of this process. In most cases, it works. Okay. I am not here to tell you what to do. That's not what therapists do. Unless, yes, there is an urgent requirement, a situation that you might have to salvage, etc. It's like clinical purview. But I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to aid you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you to take you from point A to point B. Okay, a lot of people also come, they bring their children, they bring their spouses, they'll bring their parents, and they'll be like, tell them, speak to them, theek karo ina. No, that's not why we are here. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a mother, right? I'm here to help you. What is the problem? How can we all get from point A to point B? Let's sit and talk about that. That is very important. I think another thing is that a lot of people are like, there's something wrong with you, therefore you're going to therapy. No, I can go just because I want to build on myself. I can be completely sorted, but there might be something that I feel like I can build on a little more. So that's a very positive psychology point of view that, I'm here, I'm resilient. I want to build on a little more resilience today. I'm kind, maybe I want to be kinder. Is there a need? Is there a requirement? Sit, talk about it, right? And then there's my favorite. A therapist is completely sorted person. Your therapist is not a sorted person. It's like saying an oncologist cannot get cancer. It's like saying somebody who does orthopedic surgery cannot break a bone. No, your therapist is a human being with a certain skill set who's going to take you from point A to point B. What's so different about talking to a friend and talking to a therapist? An unbiased opinion, a goal oriented conversation, and the way I practice, I'm a non bullshit person. Sorry if the word is offensive, but you need to call people out on certain things when you see them. They're there for a certain reason, whether you sugarcoat it and say it or whether you say it in a straightforward manner. That depends on who the person is on the other side. And
Mm.
therapy is not for weak, and therapy is not for people who are crazy or something is wrong with them. Today, there are cultures where if you don't have a therapist, they're like, what's wrong with you? Where do you go? Like, what's happening over there? Right? How do you not have a therapist? So, perception.
So if you're feeling stuck in your life, or if you're feeling that it is not your 100% great life that you're
Yeah.
living right now, and
Yeah.
there is a scope for enhancement,
Yeah. Are
then
you
also
living the best
seeking.
version of yourself?
Mm.
Is this making you happy? If it's not making you happy, I teach a lot. So I tell my kids, you're not happy, you're not a tree. So they're like, what does that mean? You're not a tree. Get up and move. You're not happy, get up and move. You can do something about it. It's up to you. It takes a lot of courage to come for therapy. It takes a lot of courage to change, right? That's where courage, and then you become a little braver. So you're able to take steps after that.
It takes also a lot of courage to acknowledge that you're not perfect.
For sure. And that you're not okay. There's a lot of, Instagram reels, it's okay to not be okay. It's true. It's true. For once, Instagram reels are true, right? It's okay. You acknowledge. But what after the acknowledgement? I've also seen a lot of people with great amounts of wisdom. What are you doing with this wisdom if you're not exercising the wisdom? If you're not executing, you're stagnant, you're there. What's the block? What's the roadblock that we pick up and then we are able to move? Or we move around it? Or we treat the block as a brick and we build on it?
Yeah. There are different dimensions to life,
Definitely.
and we are approaching these different dimensions from different pathways individually.
Definitely.
And what works for one person might not work for another person, or might just work even more brilliantly for another person.
Absolutely.
And I think there's only one way, and that is to find out and to try.
Definitely. I've seen this. I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, my mentor does it like this, puts in like 16 hours a day, and that's what I'm doing." This person is burnt out, charred, come to me, absolutely emotionally, physically broken. This is not working for you. It may work for your mentor, but it's definitely not working for you.
Right.
So it's okay. It's okay to feel inspired. Take whatever works for you. You don't have to cut copy paste just because today, Michael Jordan did it a particular way. You don't have to do it the way Michael Jordan did it. You can do it your own way. You have your level of resilience, you have your grit. You do it in that manner. Check where you are. You've been gifted with certain things. We use the cards that we are dealt with.
Avovi, these are very layered things that we're talking about here.
Right?
When you acknowledge that you want to improve your life, you want to create some growth, you want to better something, and you are sorting after therapy as a tool for that,
Mm.
there could be many tools. Therapy is one of the tools,
Yes.
right? There could be coaching, mentoring,
Yeah.
different frameworks
Yeah.
that you can work with, and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So a lot of my clients also come to me with this thought that they
Mm.
want to improve their life, but then also the parallel conversation that opens up, that are you inherently a person who is content in life, or who knows the feeling of contentment, or are you somebody who's just stretching out the boundary to go to the next thing
Yeah,
and
that is
chase
very
after it?
important. That is so important. So I've met a lot of people who are just not happy with themselves. And those people generally don't even have a finish line. So, as a therapist, that's what I ask them then, that what does this content version of you look like? Sometimes they don't even have an answer because all they have learned in life is to run. It's a race without a finish line. And just think about it. If you're running a race without a finish line, what happens to you? It's like a boxer in a ring without having any bells, without having any rounds. What is going to happen to that fighting person who keeps fighting?
Burnout.
Burnout.
So this is something that one has to decipher for themselves, whether it's a question of you not being content with who you are, or it's a question of really creating a genuine improvement for yourself.
Yeah, and there's this whole, strive for excellence, don't just settle. There's this big herd mentality that is happening. Sure, but see, what are your resources? What is your aptitude? How much can you do? How much can you stretch? How much can you build? Okay, we all say sky's the limit, you can do whatever. Everyone can't do whatever.
Mm.
Sometimes some people don't have it, and they spend their whole life breaking their head and really breaking their physical bodies, falling ill, right? They still don't have answers, they still don't get there. It could be a part of your life script
Mm.
that you're just taught to be either a perfectionist or strive for excellence. What does that excellence look like?
Right. So if it is genuinely a question of you not being content, then you could probably try feeling content. And if it is translating into a real experience of contentment for you.
Yeah,
If it is not, then maybe you need to further look beyond and
yeah, look
sort help.
beyond and see, these things are ever changing because it's emotions. Emotions are fluid. Today my contentment could look like a Ferrari. Tomorrow my contentment could look like a beach.
Mm.
It's different.
I also want to bring in the gender related pressures here.
Mm,
There is a certain kind of pressure that is on men
mm,
to not be unstable. When I say
mm.
unstable, it's not just the income, the provider role, the gender role that's assigned to them,
Yeah.
but also unstable in their thoughts, in their emotions, in their behavior. There's
Mm,
a lot of pressure on them to not exhibit an emotional behavior, a cry for help.
right.
How does one work with that? Because emotionally you are feeling something, but the conditioning is that you shouldn't be emoting it
And
out.
that's the word. It's conditioning, right? And it starts at home. It starts at home. I'm going to emulate the first, father figure I have. How does he cope? How does he emote? How does he respond? How does he communicate? Like all of these things start at home, right? You don't have the most positive father figure, then the mother figure has to sort of step in and say, okay, this is the healthy thing to do, right? Some people don't have either. Then you look outward, you look for positive figures over there, you look for spaces. And yeah, it's very hard. It's so hard for, like, how is a child going to find all of these things? It's hard. It's not easy. And the pressure on men is very, very real. Be a man, mard ban. Crying is for wusses, and all of these things is bunch of horrible, like, labels and tags. No, emotions are emotions. Girl, boy, man, woman, you know, call it what you want. It shouldn't matter. They're all on the spectrum of emotions and they need to be validated. They need to be accepted and you move forward from there.
You know,
So don't let's have a culture which is not shaming, men, like, yeah, oh, men are not men anymore. No, men are allowed to cry. It doesn't make you less of a man. Men are allowed to share. You don't have to keep it all inside. That's the recipe to fall sick.
one is the society, how they expect you to behave or not behave, but one
Right.
is your own personal talk that you're having with yourself. And I have a wide smile on my face because today, just before you, we had a gentleman on the show
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about something,
Mm.
and we were in the green room
Right.
and he cried out. And
Right.
I felt so happy in that
Yeah.
moment. I mean, it's not the right thing to say. And I was also crying. Both of us had a
No, it's
good cry.
authentic. It's authentic. Like he probably comes from a very, very positive space where he feels it's okay. It's okay to be this.
Throughout that whole time, this whole exchange of emotion, both of us crying, I was thinking in my
Yeah.
heart, how lucky are his kids?
Yeah. You're
They
teaching your
have such a
kids.
father.
Yeah.
How lucky is his wife that he is
Yeah.
so
Secure in his
receptive and
he's
so
secure in his
sensitive.
skin.
Yeah.
He's very secure in his skin that it's fine. It's absolutely it's great. You need to cry just the way, we are like, okay, you can be happy and it's fine. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. Okay, mindfulness is very important. I'm not endorsing violence at any
Yeah.
level, right? I'm not sort of saying eruptions are okay, etc., etc. No, none of that. No, but a healthy space is the most important thing today.
Yeah.
And it's also on the receiver, right? Today, if I'm frowned upon as a man for crying, or I'm saying big boys don't cry, people's favorite, right? Boys don't cry, big boys don't cry. These are narratives, these are old narratives,
Mm,
and they're unrequired.
mm,
Why? Let the child cry. Boy, girl, doesn't matter. It's
mm.
a language. You are communication is a language.
Yeah.
It's a language. You teach the child the right thing
Mm.
no matter what.
However, we talked about trauma. We tried to understand and decode
Mm,
trauma in depth and how to
mm,
deal with trauma and how to
mm.
identify trauma. I also want to have a parallel conversation about grief.
Oh,
You know, people find it very difficult to process grief.
yeah.
First up, define what is grief.
So, grief, and this is just from my experience, it's not textbook. I find grief to be uh, an overwhelming emotion. It goes beyond sadness. It's very, very hard to describe. It's like a very heavy bag on mostly your chest. Okay. And it stays with you for a while. Like, what's the difference between like being sad and grief? Sadness is a part of grief. Grief is a much larger emotion. So, you know, sometimes they look the same. Like when people lose people, etc. You say that they're grieving. That's because they're also going through a multitude of emotions when you are grieving. You're not just sad. And there are stages and there are steps for grief.
What are the different stages of grief and what are the emotions that people are dealing with when they are going through grief?
Textbook, you have your Kubler-Ross stages of grief, right? You start with denial. You just cannot accept it. You cannot accept that this particular experience has happened to you, that you have had a loss. Okay, going back a little bit, grief is not just if someone passes away, it is a sense of loss. It is you are grieving because you've lost something. It could be the loss of a dream, it could be the loss of, you know, I've seen people come to me because they've lost pets and they come to process that, that grief, that big, heavy sadness. It could be the loss of something, not just someone always. So that is important. It could be the loss of love. So you grieve a particular relationship which is, done its time and it's gone. So this is what it is in my experience. Okay. Going back to the stages, first is denial. First is denial, then it's anger. Okay. Then it comes to bargaining. All right. And after that, it goes into depression. And then we have acceptance.
What happens at these different stages?
So what I want to say is that these stages are not linear. And now I don't want to talk to you about them in this linear format. I want to talk to you in the raw nature that they are.
Hmm.
At one point you will feel very angry that this particular thing has happened to you. How could it happen to you? It's not okay. The universe is not fair.
Why me?
Why me? You will not get answers, right? Then it comes down to, okay, all right, maybe you accept all of a sudden who I am. Then you'll go back to being angry, which was actually the second stage. Then you'll go back front. You'll get depressed. Then again, you might go to acceptance. Then again, you'll go back to bargaining. That, okay, universe, you did this, now give me this. Or like, this pain is too much. You are bargaining. You are constantly bargaining with yourself, with the experience that you've had. You're constantly bargaining. What is going on in the system? You're not able to make peace with it.
Mm.
Okay. Then you come to a sense of sadness. The bargaining is not worked out.
Between grief and trauma,
Mhm.
is grief easier to identify than trauma?
The grief can be a part of trauma
Mm.
very easily. I mean, grieving the loss of, if you've had a bad experience, let's say with a parent, for example, or let's say with some caregiver, and it was a great relationship, right? You're going to grieve that relationship. You have to grieve the loss because a lot of people try to make it better and try to hold on to it because they also want a sense of family. They want those things intact, right? They want to be attached to society, and they've been taught that family, bond, society, acceptance, they've been taught all of these things. Whereas if you say no to family, you're out of the circle. So you're grieving, you're going to grieve the loss of a lot of things over there.
Sometimes when a big loss happens to you, it becomes
Mm.
too overwhelming to accept it in that
Could be
moment,
traumatic.
and also to even see it for what it is.
Yeah.
And the next stage is not being able to process it in that
Mm.
very moment. So, what do you do with grief, or what do you do with people in your own family when a big loss has happened, but they're not processing it, or they are exhibiting a behavior which is not acknowledging the loss? There are people who will jump the guns and will be in the normal from the next day, or who will
Yes.
take the burden on their shoulders that now this has happened, so I have become the
Yes.
accountable person who is going to be taking care of.
I heard a very beautiful thing on a talk show that I can't remember, but grief is like an uninvited guest. It is a very living thing. It will show up at your doorstep. You will not even know. I personally have had friends who've had great losses. They've lost parents, and they could be walking on the road, and it will just hit you in the face. And you will start crying, and you will not know what to do with yourself. It's a very living thing. Finish crying. If there is something like that, slowly you will learn to live with it. You will coexist. Then slowly, 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 the power becomes less. You acknowledge it's there. It's always going to be there. It doesn't leave your body. But the hold it has on you with time, slowly as you process it, and take the help. Do it with someone. Don't do it alone. You'll need the help. It's just easier.
Mm. Men grieving and women grieving is two different things again.
Very different, very different, very different.
Most of the times, the men are not able to express that they are grieving, like
Yeah,
how we were talking earlier,
yeah,
that they take the pressure of being the solid rock in the moments of a loss.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
true. It's true. Because they feel like that's the role that they have to adopt at that time, and that they cannot show any sign of weakness. This also comes for a lot of alpha women, where they will refuse to cry in front of their children or refuse to cry in front of people and show up like
Mm.
fully strong.
Yeah.
That is hard. That is hard. I'm not saying cry at the moment. There's also another completely different cultural aspect where I've been for, funerals, and they literally say that, catch the person. Has she cried? Make her cry.
Mm.
Doesn't work. It almost sounds cruel. The intention might not be cruel. It comes from a place of address the grief now
Yeah.
so that people move on.
I've seen that in movies that
Yeah,
people beating the woman up,
it's a very real thing
slap
where
her,
they
just
make
make them
you
cry.
feel. And even if you don't want to feel at that time, grief is a very personal journey. It is very alone. You will feel very alone. So make sure that there is somebody by you, even if you are walking alone, there is somebody holding your hand somewhere, because it's important. Even if it is a silent conversation, uh, amongst my friends, I have like a village. I have like a village, and I'm very grateful for my village. We can pick up the phone and we can just be on the phone and not say anything and still coexist. Whoever needs to cry, scream, shout, yes, everybody's not that lucky. Find your people. Please find your people. Create that ecosystem. It doesn't come, overnight. Whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, create that ecosystem for yourself where you have one two people.
This conversation also acts as a reminder for all of us to reflect that if we have these strong social connections, because these are also important for you to navigate through a lot of
Yes,
mental health related
they are
issues and
very
your emotions.
important. They're very important. Whenever I've seen people trying to carry a load of things, feeling super strong in the beginning, you'll be able to do it. I promise you, your body will catch up and you'll fall to the floor and you will not know what happened to you.
Mm.
So it's very important. It's okay to ask for help, no matter what it is.
I like the way you put it up because your body does catch up with your emotions.
It does. It does. I've seen it, like when when someone is sitting in front of me, I will ask you about your physical health because that tells me a lot about your inner world, your inner functioning.
Mm.
You know, you have a book right here behind you, Louis Hay.
Yeah.
She's done such
Oh,
good
I love
work.
her work.
She's done such good work, and it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
It's just that the body is able to contain for some time, and then afterwards, if you feel like, you can hold on to things and you can keep it inside and keep it inside, it's going to come up and manifest as an illness at some point. If you open this book, it'll tell you what a pimple means. It'll tell you,
Yeah.
what a earache means. It'll tell you what a panic attack means. It'll tell you a wide range of things. And they just happen to be true. Her work has a lot of science behind it.
Yeah.
So treat your body and treat your brain right. It's all connected. It's all connected at the end of the day. When you come in and when you're doing, like, my first session will always be about, what are you doing? Are you exercising? Are you eating right? Are you sleeping right? Because these are all parameters that tell me, how are you functioning? Are you on point?
However, we also think that our brain is a part of our body, but our mind is not. But we have to also understand somewhere that your mind is also part of body, and whatever is
It's
happening in the
there. It's
mind,
originating through your body. Maybe
yeah,
not just your brain, but it's all there.
yeah. In yoga, they used to teach us that whatever is happening in the mind, there will be a physical manifestation of it in your
Yeah.
body because it is a part of your body.
Yeah. And so many times, right? Emotions are captured in different parts of the body. Today, we might have an arm ache and we don't know why it's hurting. Maybe if you talk to that part of you, it'll tell you that it is tired of carrying something, and that's your mind.
Mm,
That's not your arm. That's your mind.
mm,
It's your mind speaking. It's your mind being able to convey what the emotion is.
mm.
Yes, your brain is involved physiologically, obviously.
Right. In the world of yoga, because I have studied it, practiced it, taught it
Right.
for so many years, every posture has an emotional significance as well. When
Mm-hmm.
you bend forward, there's a certain kind of emotion that you're releasing. When you
Yeah.
bend backwards, there's a certain kind of
Yeah.
emotion that you're releasing. So there's a
Yeah.
release of emotions physically from your body through your
Yeah.
chest, through your spine,
Yeah. It's somatic
through your,
work. We call
yeah.
it somatic work. And there are a lot of these 28-day challenges that are going out on
Mm,
Instagram where they teach you how to release, like, and that's what a lot of other therapies do that are eclectic in nature, right? Like, you have your dance movement therapy and you have yoga. You
chakra
have all of,
healing.
yeah, you have all of these things that facilitate, you know, the relief of emotions, the catharsis in different ways. If you're not able to speak about it, Maybe there's another way you need to release it.
I hear so many people saying, I don't have anybody that I can talk this to.
It's so true. We live with a crowd of people and we're alone.
Yeah. So if that is happening with you, I think one probable solution is that you could try maybe being, friends with certain people, certain other people, or join certain groups. There are so many
Definitely.
online groups and things like that,
Not just online groups, but I would say go out, get there, join a class. Like, this is a very real solution that, and it's going to take some time. It's not that you'll join a class and, you'll find people. No, you know, maybe you won't find people, but at least you get some sort of exercise out of it, whether it's physical or whether it's mental or whether it's creative, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very important to just sort of go out there and explore.
Yeah, this
You
whole
don't know who you
idea,
find.
this whole idea that the world is bad and there are no good people, I'm not able to make friends,
Mm.
or when I give myself in friendships, I am cheated on or I'm taken advantage
Not
of.
from experiences.
Yeah, we could have these experiences, but there is a whole different world that exists out there, which is
There is,
beautiful.
there is.
Maybe we need to find a way to tap into that.
Yeah, you need to give it a chance. And also, I mean, if you are having continuous bad experiences and you're the common factor there, pause, reflect, see
Yeah.
what's happening. We have people coming in and saying, "This is my third marriage. I'm exiting my third marriage." What's the common factor there? What's going on? What are you choosing?
Or what
Sit
are you
and
being?
what are you being? What are you choosing to be? Right? Sit, evaluate. Think whether you want to rewire this before you get into another marriage and you exit another marriage. It can stop. It can stop.
Mm.
Do you want it to stop?
Yeah. Many possible solutions: staying in the same marriage, not choosing to marry again, getting
Yeah.
into a fourth marriage, whatever. But at every given point, it's not autonomous. You are making a choice, and it
There are
can be more
choices.
conscious.
There are choices. A lot of people will say, like, no, there are not no choices. Sometimes God doesn't give you choices, or sometimes there is no chance. Maybe there are some outliers out there. No one is
Mm.
saying no. We acknowledge everything that happens. And there are people who do come to therapy and there are no choices.
Mm.
Over there, you are just going to be honest and say, okay, we're at a roadblock here. Something's got to give. Or maybe you need to try a different type of therapy which sort of works for you, where you can continue existing in that
Mm.
environment and maybe gives you a different coping style
Mm.
or a skill set.
This episode has given us a lot of insights into coping styles, different tools that
Yeah.
one can use to improve their life,
Yeah.
to process their trauma, their grief, their other emotions better. Now we are nearing towards the end of this discussion, Havovi, and I want to ask you this one question that I ask almost all of my guests,
Mm.
and that is their idea of success. The world that we live in thrives so much on success, on
Mm.
what's next, on associating my identity with my success. So, what is
Mm.
success? Give me a healthy blueprint of success. I know it's a loaded question, but
It
what are
is
your
a loaded
thoughts?
question. The idea of success. Well, if I had to give you an ideal answer, then I would say, that you're very sorted, let's say tangibly, financially, emotionally. That sounds like success. But from a very personal perspective, for me, success is peace. It is the things that are not tangible, that are you happy with yourself, in yourself. I've seen a lot of people with a lot of money, they don't even know themselves.
Mm.
So it is a loaded question. Tangibly, you can measure it with the stock market,
Yeah.
but I mean, if you go into those same homes, you'll see how poor they are
You know, I
and
can
how unsuccessful they are.
I completely understand that I put people in a spot when I ask them this definition, because a lot of us don't think about it on everyday basis. But while I'm putting my guest in this spot to
Mm.
answer this question, I'm also asking my viewers to reflect in their own lives and try to think what is their idea of success. And if that idea is not serving them, there is a scope for a newer idea or
There
another
is,
idea or
there is,
another
and I
idea.
think like it can be flexible. I don't think always has to be a destination.
Mm.
It can be flexible. 1 year, my success could be that I conquer my mental health and that I'm in charge and that I have learnt my nervous system and my nervous system doesn't have power over me. I have power of
Mm.
my nervous system. It's a very big thing to work towards. You'll be probably the richest person on the planet then,
Right.
right? The next year could be financial success. It can keep changing.
Right. Thank you for giving that perspective about seeing our success, evaluating our success. And I really hope that our viewers are, taking away all the wisdom that you have shared in this episode. Thank you, Havovi, for joining me on the Journey Within
Thank you for
podcast.
having me.
Thank you for watching today's episode. Please mention in the comment section what is it that you have liked about this episode. And if there are questions that you have for us, please put them down in the comment section. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one.